Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through the noise, find the key insights, and basically give you the shortcut to getting up to speed. Today, we're diving into a market that maybe doesn't make headlines every day, but it's absolutely critical to, well, how we build everything, the global road roller market. And our analysis today comes from some really detailed work by Cognitive Market Research. It's their Global Road Roller Market Report 2025-2033. Okay, so let's start with something that kind of jumps out right away. Did you know that back in 2021, this market globally was already pulling in over $4 billion in sales revenue? $4 billion. But here's where it gets really interesting. The forecasts. They show this market isn't just, stable. It's actually set for some pretty significant growth. We're talking going from that $4,066 million roughly in 2021, projected to hit about $4,862 million by 2025. And then expected to reach a pretty substantial $6,952 million, give or take, by 2033. If you average that out, it's a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of about 4.57%. So steady upward movement.
Right. And what's fascinating here, I think, is that these numbers, they aren't just statistics about machines, are they? They actually tell a much bigger story. It's about, global infrastructure expansion, major construction investments happening worldwide, which then raises the question, doesn't it? If the market's growing like this, where is this growth really concentrated? And what's driving it in those specific places?
Exactly. That's the perfect setup. So we've got this global picture growth, but let's dig into the regions a bit. Where's the action happening? Let's start off in North America. Okay, so this region, back in 2021, its market was valued at just over $900 million. And it's projected to reach nearly $1.5 billion by 2033. That's a growth rate of just over 4.2% annually. Pretty solid. The U.S. predictably is the biggest piece of that pie in terms of sheer volume. Yeah. But what kind of caught my eye was the growth rate in Canada and especially Mexico. Mexico's projection is over 5.4% annual growth. That's quite strong.
Yeah, that's a really important detail because while the U.S. is the anchor, no doubt, those higher growth figures in Canada and Mexico, they're not just abstract numbers. They suggest, significant ongoing infrastructure projects, maybe big highway upgrades, new logistics centers, or even major urban development pushing things forward there. It shows that momentum isn't always just about the biggest market size, right? Sometimes it's about where the most sort of dynamic new activity is actually happening.
That makes sense. Fascinating point. Okay, let's hop across the pond now to Europe. Their sales. Over $800 million in 2021. And they're looking at exceeding $1.35 billion by 2033. The annual growth rate there is nudging close to 4.5%, so pretty comparable to North America overall. But it's a really mixed bag within Europe. You've got the established players, like the UK and Germany. They show solid, consistent growth. But then there's this category, rest of Europe, and that part is actually growing at a really robust 7% annually. That's a significant surge.
Yeah, that 7% for the rest of Europe, that really does stand out, doesn't it? It points to a more nuanced picture. While the big economies hold their share, this strong growth across maybe smaller, more diverse European nations suggests there's widespread infrastructure work happening, things that maybe don't get the big headlines. Lots of modernization projects, critical expansions kind of happening all at once across the continent. It's not just one big thing, but many smaller, vital ones adding up.
Right, a cumulative effect. Okay, and speaking of really big numbers, let's turn to the leader in 2021, Asia Pacific. This region was the clear frontrunner, valued at an impressive $1.66 billion back then, and is projected to climb to over $2.75 billion by 2033. Now, China is obviously a huge driver there. It's heading towards being a $1 billion market all by itself by 2033. Massive. But India is showing really powerful growth, too, over 5.5% annually. That's a very strong, sustained rate.
What's really striking about Asia Pacific is just the sheer scale involved. You have countries like China and India engaged in these absolutely massive urbanization and infrastructure programs. That translates directly into this huge demand. And India's high growth rate specifically points to a monumental pipeline of new projects. We're talking new highways, new smart cities, industrial corridors, literally paving the way for millions to join the modern economy. It's pretty foundational.
Absolutely foundational. Okay, from Asia's dynamism, let's shift focus to South America. Their road roller revenues were smaller, around $200 million in 2021. The projection takes them to over $328 million by 2033, with a steady 3.9% annual growth. Brazil leads the region, as you might expect, but places like Argentina and Colombia are also showing healthy growth. It points to consistent investment across the board.
Right. And that consistency, even if it's not, explosive growth like some other regions, it really highlights the ongoing sort of fundamental development needs across South America. It's about connecting vast areas, improving trade routes, basic nation building stuff, maybe less about flashy new projects and more about practical, long-term improvements for economic stability.
Good point. Steady progress. Okay, next stop, the Middle East. This region's market generated almost $240 million in 2021. Projections are heading towards over $438 million by 2033. And the growth rate is strong here too, over 5.2% annually. Saudi Arabia is the biggest market there, but the UAE really stands out. Its growth rate is the highest in the region, topping 5.7% a year.
Yeah, that high growth in the Middle East is really interesting. It's directly linked to those huge, sometimes visionary development projects we hear about. You're seeing nations making strategic moves away from oil, investing heavily in new cities, tourism infrastructure, massive transport networks, the UAE's pace, for example. It's not just about building roads, it's about creating entire new economic ecosystems from the ground up, and that needs serious infrastructure.
Right, building the foundations for a different kind of economy.
Hmm.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about Africa. Now, this market might seem smaller in absolute dollar terms, around $227 million in 2021, but its projected growth is arguably the most significant story globally. It's expected to surge to over $577 billion by 2033. That's a remarkable 6.4% annual growth overall for the continent. Nigeria and South Africa are key markets, sure, but again, that rest of Africa category, it's showing one of the strongest growth rates anywhere in the world, over 7.4% annually.
Wow. Yeah, this is a perfect example of where that future growth potential really shines. The really strong expansion across Africa, especially in these, diverse emerging economies, it just signals this massive push for foundational infrastructure. We're talking about new roads, connecting remote communities, building vital trade corridors, literally paving the way for quicker urbanization and industrial development. It's a really clear sign of a continent actively and aggressively building its future connectivity and economic base.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together then. Our deep dive into this global roller market. It really paints a picture of pretty robust, steady expansion, pretty much across the board, actually. From 2021 right through the projections to 2033, that upward trend is, well, it's undeniable. It shows where the world is literally putting down its physical foundations for the future. And yeah, while every region is growing, it's worth just quickly highlighting those real hotspots again. We saw particularly strong growth surges noted in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia Pacific. That's where the most intense construction activity seems to be happening, signaling some major global shifts.
Right. And if we connect that back to the bigger picture, the continued growth here, especially in developing regions, it just fundamentally underscores this persistent global need for infrastructure. These machines, they're not just smoothing asphalt for roads, they're creating the arteries for new economies, right?
Yeah.
Enabling everything from airports and ports to huge urban expansion projects. It shows, with surprising clarity, really, where the world is choosing to invest in its physical growth.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening? Maybe consider how these big trends in global infrastructure investment might ripple outwards. How could they influence things like local job markets or global supply chains, even the speed of innovation in construction tech itself? What kind of future are these powerful machines actually paving for us? And what sort of opportunities or maybe even challenges might that future hold? Something to think about.